So one of the first videos we shot in this series was the shoulder cars, controlled articular rotation. So I want to show you also the hip cars. So your shoulder and your hips, ball and socket joints, pretty big range of motion. So you can compare those to your knee joint, which basically is a hinge. It's not technically a hinge, but just helpful in terms of like a framework. In terms of the controlled articular rotations, we want to take the ball and move it in its socket through all of the articulations of the joint itself. So let me show you the hip controlled articular rotation. And again, all this stuff, when you see cars, that's the functional range conditioning world. You can check them out directly. So we always like to cite our work. But this is a hip car. So there's two different ways of doing it that I like to show people. Actually, three different ways. You can do these standing. I think for a lot of people, standing hip car can be difficult just from a balance standpoint. So I'm going to show you a quadruped version and a version in a high plank. So first the quadruped version. So I'm in this position here. I'm going to lift the right hip is the one that I'm going to be taking. I'm going to be doing the cars with. So I'm here. I'm going to bring my hip forward and then out, kick back as I continue to rotate. And then I can go in the opposite direction. And the idea there is you want to isolate just the femur moving in the acetabulum. The acetabulum is the receptor basically for the femur, the head of the femur in that socket. You're just trying to move the femur in that socket. So you shouldn't see a lot of spinal movement. I should just be isolating that femur in the acetabulum of the hip. So one of the things you saw there is that I couldn't get full range of motion because my other leg was in the way when I tried to essentially scrape across to do that part of the hip car. So a fix for that is to do this in a high plank position. The only issue is a lot of people aren't going to be strong enough to do this just to hold that high plank position. On the other hand, this could be a great at-home, no equipment workout to both work a plank position, so you get some shoulder strength, you get some ab strength, and also working that hip mobility simultaneously. And the great thing about doing this in that high plank position is you're cueing good anterior trunk control, which we need for good hip health. So let's show you the right hip again in this high plank position. So now this leg is out of the way and I can scrape across and do the full hip car. I can reverse that. So starting here, kicking back, rotating as I go. So that is the hip controlled articular rotation, first in a quadruped position and then in a high plank position. And I might as well just show you the standing position as well. You can hold on to something if balance is an issue, but that hip car up till you run out of space, out till you run out of space, start to rotate, kick back, bring your leg through. So the common thing with this, with a hip car, is getting into spinal extension. So if you watch me from the side, as I run out of space here and kick back, so this is where we start to run into that spinal extension, because the human body doesn't actually have a lot of hip extension. So in order for me to get my leg back further than this, I'd have to compromise with the spine, but we don't want that. We just want to get true hip extension. So again, so that is the hip controlled articular rotation from quadruped position, high plank position, and then impromptu from a standing position.